The humans left without a word. They offended humanity, and the council paid the price. Part 1. The station hung in the void like a silver seed against the black. Viridia Prime spun slowly, its rings glowing with the lights of 200 species. Inside its central chamber, the air hummed with translators, the rustle of alien robes, and the quiet tension of diplomacy. At the far end of the crescent-shaped council hall, Daniel Cross sat with his hands folded on the smooth surface of the human delegation desk. His dark eyes watched the speakers, but his mind was already miles ahead, calculating what would happen when the vote came. Beside him, Lena Ruiz adjusted the collar of her gray uniform, her fingers steady despite the knot in her stomach. She had spent the last 6 months trying to explain why Earth's neural interface tech could not be shared. Not because humans were greedy, but because it was tied to something deeper than code. It was tied to consent, to dignity, concepts some council members still treated like quaint human myths. High Arbiter Zorlan of the Cathari hegemony rose from his obsidian throne at the center of the chamber. His segmented carapace clicked softly as he moved, and his voice, filtered through the translator, boomed with practiced authority. "The motion before us is clear," he said. "Humanity possesses a technology that enhances cognition, memory, and emotional regulation across organic and synthetic systems. They refuse to release its core architecture to the concordance, citing ethical boundaries. Yet they use it freely in joint infrastructure projects. This is not cooperation. It is selective secrecy." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Varel ambassador, her translucent skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns, raised a slender hand. "The humans have always been cautious," she said. "They lost billions in their own AI wars. Their caution is not deceit." Zorlan's mandibles twitched. "Caution becomes obstruction when it hinders galactic progress. If they will not share willingly, then sanctions must compel transparency." Daniel leaned forward slightly. "With respect, Arbiter," he said, his voice calm but firm, "our technology is not a weapon or a commodity. It's woven into the neural pathways of our people. To extract it without context is to risk psychological harm, not just to us but to anyone who uses it without understanding its safeguards. We offered open collaboration on a new framework. You rejected it because it required oversight. You demand control," Zorlan shot back. "The Concordance does not bow to planetary ethics committees." Lena finally spoke, her voice quieter but sharp as glass. "Then perhaps the Concordance doesn't deserve access." The room fell silent. Even the ambient hum of the life support system seemed to pause. No species had ever spoken so plainly to the High Arbiter in open session. The vote came an hour later. 112 in favor of sanctions. 98 opposed. 12 abstentions. The motion passed as the gavel sounded, a soft chime that echoed like a death knell. Daniel stood without a word. He nodded once to Lena, and together they walked out of the chamber, their boots clicking against the polished floor. No one stopped them. No one apologized. Back aboard the human diplomatic vessel, Wayfarer docked in Bay 7. Daniel stared out the viewport at the swirling nebula beyond Viridia Prime. Lena entered the observation lounge, holding 2 cups of real coffee, earth-grown, smuggled past customs. She handed one to him. "They think we'll cave," she said. "They think we need them," Daniel replied. He took a slow sip. "But we've been holding this alliance together with duct tape and goodwill for years." "They just never noticed." Lena sat beside him. "What now?" "We go home," he said. "And we tell Earth what happened." That night, across the Concordance, human personnel received a single encrypted message. It contained no orders, no panic, no drama, just coordinates, departure windows, and a phrase, "Recall Protocol Theta." On Viridia Prime, human scientists packed their labs. Engineers shut down their workstations with quiet efficiency. Diplomats erased their logs. Nurses in the medical wing transferred patient files to local staff with careful instructions. No one shouted. No one argued. They simply left. By dawn, every human, every last one, was gone. The Wayfarer detached from its berth without fanfare. Its engines flared once softly, and then it slipped into the dark like a shadow. Other ships followed. Freighters from Mars, research skiffs from Luna, even the tiny courier drones that carried messages between human outposts. All vanished within 6 hours. At first, the Council assumed it was a protest. a dramatic withdrawal meant to pressure them into reversing the sanctions. Zorlan scoffed during the emergency session. "Let them sulk," he said. "They'll be back when they realize how much they rely on Concordance trade routes." But days passed, then weeks, no hails, no signals, no debris, just silence. Deep in the archives of Viridia Prime, a junior data clerk named Joran, a soft-spoken Marathi with 4 eyes and a love for human poetry, noticed something odd. The station's climate regulators, usually stable to 3 decimal places, had begun fluctuating. He traced the anomaly to a subsystem labeled Terran Integration Layer, non-critical. Curious, he pulled the logs. The last human engineer to touch that system had been Lena Ruiz 3 months prior. She'd called it a harmony patch meant to smooth out energy inefficiencies in the station's core. Joran tried to access the patch's source. Code locked, encrypted with a key that no longer existed in Concordance databases. He mentioned it to his supervisor. The report was filed, forgotten. Meanwhile, on the agricultural moon of Tarsus 4, automated harvesters began skipping rows. On the medical station Helios 9, diagnostic bots started misreading blood toxicity levels. On the trade hub of Keswick, cargo loaders froze mid-cycle, dropping crates of fragile biosamples onto the tarmac. At first, these were seen as isolated glitches, bad maintenance, overworked systems. But the pattern grew, and every time the root cause led back to something human. A calibration routine, a background algorithm, a tiny piece of code no one had noticed because it had always just worked. Back on Earth, Daniel stood on a hill outside Denver, watching the sunset paint the Rockies in gold and violet. His comm unit lay silent in his pocket. No messages from the stars. No demands. No apologies. Lena joined him, her arms crossed against the evening chill. "Do you think they'll figure it out?" she asked. "Eventually," he said. "But by then it'll be too late." She nodded. "Good." Below them, the city hummed with life. Clean energy grids, quiet maglev trains, children laughing in parks rebuilt after the last Great War. Humanity had learned the hard way that trust must be earned, not assumed. And the Concordance had failed that test. They had asked for humanity's greatest gift, and when it was refused, they chose to punish the givers. Now, the givers were gone, and the universe would learn what silence truly cost. The humans left without a word. They offended humanity. And the council paid the price part. 2 weeks passed and the silence from Earth grew heavier. At first, the Galactic Concordance barely noticed the absence. Human ships had been few, their presence modest. But then the small things began to fail. On the farming moon of Tarsus 4, the harvest drones stopped recognizing ripe crops. They drove in circles or crushed healthy plants under their treads. The local overseers blamed faulty sensors. But when they opened the units, they found human-written firmware buried deep in the control cores, code that had quietly adjusted for soil shifts, weather changes, and plant stress. Without updates from Earth servers, the drones were blind. On Viridia Prime, the air grew stale. The climate system, once perfectly balanced, now swung between dry heat and damp chill. Technicians from 3 species worked around the clock, but every fix unraveled within hours. Joran, the Marathi data clerk, finally pulled the full integration logs. He discovered that human engineers had not just patched the system, they had rebuilt its logic from the ground up, using adaptive algorithms that learned from daily usage. Now, with no human oversight, the system was lost like a child suddenly alone in a storm. The medical crisis hit next. Across the quadrant, hospitals relied on human-designed nanites to clean blood, repair tissue, and fight infection. These tiny machines had been shared freely during the plague of Vexus, saving millions. But their maintenance required weekly calibration pulses sent from Earth. Those pulses had stopped. Slowly, the nanites began to degrade. Patients who should have healed grew weaker. Surgeries that were once routine turned deadly. Counselor Elira Voss of Nereus watched the reports pile up on her desk. She had voted against the sanctions, warning that humanity's contributions ran deeper than anyone admitted. Now her warnings echoed in empty halls. She called an emergency session, her voice tight with urgency. "This is not sabotage," she told the chamber. "This is consequence. We cut the thread without knowing how much was hanging from it." Zorlan scoffed. "Nonsense. Humans are clever but not irreplaceable. We will rebuild their systems with our own. But they could not. Kothari engineers tried to rewrite the drone code on Tarsus 4. Their version worked for 2 days before crashing every unit at once. Varel programmers attempted to mimic the climate algorithms. The station's oxygen levels dropped dangerously low before they reverted to the old system. Then came the discovery that chilled the council. To its core, Lena Ruiz had left behind a backup drive in her lab, hidden inside a coffee mug labeled World's Okayest Scientist. Joren found it by accident while clearing out human quarters. The drive contained her personal logs, encrypted but not locked, as if she had wanted someone to find them. Elira watched the first log alone in her quarters. Lena's face filled the screen, tired but calm. "If you're seeing this," she said, "then we're gone and you're starting to notice the gaps. Good. Maybe now you'll understand. We didn't hide our tech to control you. We embedded it carefully because we care. Every line of code had a reason, a safeguard, a limit, a respect for life. You called us primitive for refusing to hand it over like candy. But true advancement isn't about power. It's about responsibility." The next log showed Daniel Cross standing in the Wayfarer's cockpit. "You think ethics are a luxury," he said. "They're the foundation. Without them, you're just building faster ways to destroy yourselves. We tried to show you another path. You chose pride instead." The final log was short. Just 10 seconds. Lena looked straight into the camera. "You broke trust. You insulted dignity. You assumed we needed your approval to matter. We do not." Then the screen went dark. Elira played it 3 times. Then she called Zorlan. He refused to watch the logs. Emotional manipulation, he called it. Humans always cloak weakness in pretty words, but others were listening. The Varel ambassador requested copies. The Marathi delegation held a private meeting. Even some Kothari officers began to question. Then the gravity stabilizers on Viridia Prime failed. Not completely, just enough to make walking difficult, to send loose tools floating in corridors, to spill drinks and disrupt delicate experiments. Engineers traced the problem to the station's inertial dampeners. Buried in their firmware was a human subroutine labeled Harmony Core, Do Not Modify. It had been syncing with a signal from Sol. That signal was gone. Panic spread. Families with children demanded answers. Traders canceled shipments. The Concordance's unity, once a point of pride, began to crack. A Kothari scout ship patrolling the outer rim picked up a faint transmission near the edge of human space. It wasn't a distress call. It was a message repeating on loop across all frequencies. Daniel Cross's voice, calm and clear. "You called us primitive. You demanded our gifts but scorned our values. We built your future while you slept. Now sleep without us." The scout captain sent the recording to Viridia Prime. Within hours it was everywhere. In mess halls, on public channels, whispered in corridors. Some species called it a threat. Others called it truth. Zorlan ordered the signal jammed. But it kept returning, bouncing off relay stations humans had quietly upgraded during routine maintenance. Back on Earth, no one watched the chaos unfold. Cities ran on clean fusion power. Farms bloomed under smart sunshades. Children learned history, not just of wars, but of choices. Humanity had stepped back not out of anger, but clarity. They had offered partnership. They had been met with arrogance. Now the galaxy would learn what it meant to live without the quiet hands that had held so much together. On Viridia Prime, Joran stood at a viewport watching a cargo ship struggle to dock in the unstable gravity. He thought of the coffee mug, the logs, the way Lena Ruiz had smiled in one recording while fixing a broken bot with a paperclip and a sigh. Humans hadn't left because they were weak. They left because they were done being taken for granted. And the Council, for all its power and pride, had no idea how to fix what they had broken. The humans left without a word. They offended humanity. And the Council paid the price. Part 3. The cracks in the Concordance widened like fractures in old glass. What began as scattered system failures turned into full-blown disorder. On the trade world of Keswick, cargo loaders still refused to function properly. And now the payment networks were glitching too. Human-designed encryption protocols had quietly secured every major financial transaction across the quadrant. Without the daily handshake signals from Earth, accounts froze, credits vanished, and trust in the Concordance credit standard collapsed overnight. Merchants demanded payment in raw materials or barter. Some simply stopped trading altogether. On Viridia Prime, the air grew thinner by the day. Engineers rerouted life support through backup channels, but those backups had also been tuned by human hands. The oxygen mix was off, just enough to cause headaches, fatigue, and shortness of breath in species with sensitive respiratory systems. The Myrathi delegation requested evacuation for their young. The Varel halted all non-essential travel. Even the Kuthari, proud and rigid, began rotating their staff more frequently, citing operational fatigue. Counselor Elira Voss stood before the emergency assembly again, her webbed fingers clasped tightly. "We must reach out," she said, not with demands, with apology. With humility, send a message to Sol. Tell them we were wrong. Zorlin rose slowly, his carapace dull under the chamber lights. "Apologize," he said, "to a species that abandoned its duties, that left us vulnerable by design? No, this is not regret. This is weakness, but we are vulnerable," Elira shot back. "Not because humans attacked us, but because we never truly saw them. We took their work, their quiet fixes, their patience, and called it inferiority. Now we drown in the mess we made." The chamber fell silent. For the first time, even Zorlin's loyalists looked uneasy. Later that night, Elira authorized a private transmission. She recorded a simple message in English, the language humans had taught the Concordance as a gesture of goodwill. "To the people of Earth," she began, her voice soft but steady. "We misunderstood you. We valued your tools more than your wisdom. If you can hear this, we are sorry." She sent it on every open human frequency, including the old deep space bands Earth had used during its early expansion. The reply was silence. Scans of the Sol system showed Earth unchanged, blue, green, alive. But surrounding it was something new, a shimmering lattice of energy, smooth and seamless, wrapping the entire system like a protective shell. No known concordance sensor could pierce it. No probe returned data. Ships that drifted too close lost all power for exactly 30 seconds before being gently pushed back into normal space. It was not an attack. It was a boundary. And it said clearly, "Do not enter." Rumors spread faster than facts. Some claimed human ghost ships had been spotted near the ruins of old colonies, silent vessels that vanished when hailed. Others whispered that Earth had built something unimaginable in the dark, something that made their old tech look like toys. A trader from the fringe world swore he saw a human freighter drop supplies on a plague-stricken moon, then disappear before anyone could thank them. The Concordance fractured further. The Varel announced they would no longer enforce Concordance trade laws until stability returned. The insectoid Myrathi withdrew their fleet from joint patrols. Even minor species began hoarding resources, fearing the collapse of shared systems. Zorlin could not accept it. His pride, his entire identity as High Arbiter, was built on the idea of Kuthari superiority and Concordance unity. To admit failure, to admit that humans had been essential, was unthinkable. So he chose another path. He called for war, not against Earth directly, he claimed, but to restore order. He argued that humanity had weaponized infrastructure and must be held accountable. He demanded a fleet be assembled to breach the Sol barrier and force Earth to resume its duties. Elira opposed him fiercely. "You cannot invade a species that walked away without firing a shot," she said. They showed restraint. "You would answer with violence?" "They left us crippled," Zorlin replied. "That is an act of war." The vote was closer this time. 93 in favor, 105 opposed. But Zorlin played his final card. He invoked Emergency Clause 7, the right of any major power to act unilaterally if the Concordance's survival was at stake. The Kuthari hegemony would move alone if needed, and they would not be alone for long. 3 allied species, the Dravik clans, the Sarathi Collective, and the Orlan Syndicate, pledged ships. They feared chaos more than they feared Earth. Preparations began in secret. Massive dreadnoughts powered up after years in dry dock. Weapon arrays were tested. Navigation teams plotted the fastest route to Sol. Zorlin declared that humanity would learn the cost of betrayal, but not everyone believed him. Jaren, still working quietly in Viridia's archives, found something else in Lena Ruiz's old files. A map. Not of stars or planets, but of dependencies. Lines connecting every Concordance world to hidden human subsystems. Water purifiers on desert colonies. Radiation shields on orbital habitats. Even the translation matrices in every council member's earpiece, they all traced back to human-designed cores. He showed it to Elira. She stared at the web of connections, her face pale. "They didn't just help us," she whispered. "They held us together, and now with no warning, no anger, no grand speech, humanity had let go." As the Cathari fleet gathered at the edge of known space, painting their hulls in war colors, Earth remained silent. No broadcasts, no warnings, no movement. But deep in the void, near the edge of Sol, something waited. Not a weapon, not a threat, just a ship. Small, unarmed, familiar, and on its bridge, Lena Ruiz watched the incoming fleet on her screen, her expression calm. She knew they would come, and she knew exactly what to do. The humans left without a word. They offended humanity. And the Council paid the price. Part 4. The Cathari fleet moved like a storm through the dark. 37 warships, each longer than a city block, their hulls bristling with plasma cannons and shield emitters. Behind them came the Dravik carriers, the Sarathi cruisers, and the Orlan command vessels. Over 60 ships in total, painted in the sharp reds and blacks of wartime. High Arbiter Zorlan stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Maw, his claws gripping the railing as Sul grew brighter on the view screen. He felt no fear, only certainty. Humanity had hidden behind silence and tricks. Now they would face real power. But as the fleet crossed the invisible line where human space began, everything changed. Lights flickered, engines stuttered, navigation screens filled with static. Not from damage, from something gentler, stranger. Every system on every ship powered down, not with a crash but with a sigh, as if tucking itself into bed. Weapons went dark. Comms fell silent. Even the artificial gravity softened, leaving crews floating in sudden quiet. Zorlan roared for answers. His officers scrambled, pounding consoles that no longer responded. "We're not under attack," one technician gasped. "It's like we've been unplugged." Then from the blackness ahead, a single ship emerged. It was small, barely the size of a Cathari shuttle. Sleek and white, with no visible weapons, no aggressive angles, just smooth lines and soft running lights. The Odyssey, a human science vessel, last seen leaving Viridia Prime months ago. On every bridge across the fleet, a view screen lit up. Lena Ruiz appeared, standing calmly in what looked like a simple command center. No armor, no glare, just a woman in a plain gray uniform, her dark hair pulled back, her eyes steady. "You came to force our hand," she said. Her voice was quiet but clear, translated instantly into every language aboard the fleet. "You think power is measured in cannons and hull thickness? It is not. True power is knowing when not to use it." Zorlan tried to speak, but his comms were still dead. He could only watch, Lena continued. "You broke trust. You insulted dignity. You assumed we needed your approval to matter. We do not. We built your future while you slept. Now you stand at our door, not to talk, not to learn, but to take, again." She paused. Behind her, star charts glowed softly. "We could erase your fleet with a thought. We could melt your engines, scramble your minds, leave you drifting until your air ran out. But we won't. Because that is not who we are." Then she nodded slightly. Outside, something unseen took hold of the fleet. Gently. Firmly. Like a parent lifting a child away from danger. The massive warships, each one a symbol of Cathari might, began to move. Not under their own power, but guided, turned, and pushed backward along their path. They drifted as one, silent and helpless, back toward the edge of human space. Zorlan pounded the console. "Fight back," he barked. But there was nothing to fight. No enemy to target, just empty space and an invisible will. On the Odyssey, Daniel Cross stepped into view beside Lena. He looked tired but resolute. "Go home, Zorlan," he said. "Tell your people what you saw. Tell them humanity does not seek war, but we will not be owned." Then the transmission ended. The fleet crossed back over the boundary. Instantly, systems rebooted. Lights returned. Gravity settled. But the shame ran deeper than any system failure. When the ships limped into Cathari space, the news spread like fire. Not just through official channels, but through smuggled footage. Whispered comms and crew logs leaked by horrified officers. The galaxy saw it all. The mighty fleet brought to its knees not by violence, but by restraint. By calm. By a power so complete it didn't need to prove itself. On Viridia Prime, Elira Voss watched the footage in her quarters. She did not smile. She wept. Not from sadness, but from relief. Humanity had shown mercy when they owed none. Jorn played the recording for his Myrathi kin. They didn't destroy us, he said. They taught us. Even Zorlan's allies turned away. The Dravik clans recalled their ships. The Sarathi issued a public statement. We misjudged humanity. We apologize. The Orlan Syndicate quietly reopened old trade routes with human-friendly worlds, hoping for forgiveness. Zorlan refused to speak for days. When he finally addressed the Kothari High Council, his voice was hollow. They are not weak, he admitted. They are beyond us. Back on Earth, no celebration took place. No victory speeches. The Odyssey returned to orbit, its mission complete. Lena and Daniel debriefed with Earth Command, then went home to their families. Children played in parks. Farmers tended fields. The world turned peaceful and whole, but the message had been sent not with fire, not with fury. With silence, then with grace, and the galaxy would never forget it. For the first time in centuries, the Concordance faced a truth it could not ignore. Humanity had not needed their approval. They had offered partnership, and when it was rejected, they simply walked away and proved, without a single shot fired, that they had been holding the entire alliance together all along. Now, the choice was clear: apologize or fall apart. The humans left without a word. They offended humanity. And the Council paid the price. Part 5. A year passed. The stars turned. The Concordance changed. It began with a broadcast. Not from a war room or a council chamber, but from the central plaza of Viridia Prime. Counselor Elira Voss stood before a simple podium, her webbed hands resting lightly on its surface. Behind her, representatives from every major species watched in silence. Even Zorlan was there, his carapace dull, his posture less rigid than before. Elira spoke in English first. Her voice was clear, practiced, humble. To the people of Earth, she said, we were wrong. We saw your kindness as weakness, your caution as secrecy, your ethics as delay. We demanded your gifts without honoring your reasons. For that, we are truly sorry. Then she repeated the message in every major concordance language, each translation carrying the same weight. The declaration of regret, as it came to be called, was sent on all open channels, beamed toward Sol with no expectation of reply. It was not a plea. It was an acknowledgement. A beginning. Earth did not answer, but the galaxy listened. Species that had once mocked human sentimentality now studied their old records. They read human philosophy, watched archived cultural logs, and tried to understand what they had missed. Schools on Virel worlds added Earth history to their curricula. Marathi engineers began designing systems with built-in ethical limits, inspired by human protocols. Even Kothari shipyards started including dignity checks in their AI cores, small routines that asked before acting whether a choice respected life. On Viridia Prime, a quiet project began. Workers from a dozen species gathered in the central garden, a place once used for ceremonial greetings. There they placed a single block of polished obsidian, smooth and cool to the touch. On its surface, etched in clean human script, were the words, "We asked to be seen. You chose to look away." No species claimed ownership of the memorial. It simply appeared one morning and everyone knew it belonged to all of them. Visitors left small tokens at its base: flowers, carved stones, data chips with personal apologies. No one spoke loudly near it. It was a place of reflection, not ceremony. Meanwhile, life in the Concordance slowly stitched itself back together. Without human tech, systems were less efficient but more honest. Engineers learned to build without hidden dependencies. Doctors developed new treatments without nanites. Farmers on Tarsus 4 planted crops by hand again and found joy in the soil. It was harder, slower, but it was theirs. Some worlds thrived. Others struggled. But all remembered the lesson. True progress cannot be taken. It must be shared. Far away in the heart of Sol, Earth lived in peace. Cities glowed with clean energy. Forests regrew where war had scorched the land. Children climbed trees and swam in rivers that ran clear for the first time in centuries. Humanity had turned inward not out of fear but focus. They had spent generations reaching out to the stars, only to be met with suspicion and greed. Now they healed. They built. They remembered who they were. Daniel Cross walked his dog through a park in Denver, the mountains rising in the distance. He no longer checked the comms. He knew Earth was safe, not because they hid, but because they had shown the galaxy what they were capable of. and chosen mercy instead of might. Lena Ruiz taught a class at the New Geneva Institute. Her students, bright-eyed and curious, asked about the concordance. She told them the truth. They thought strength meant control, she said. We showed them that real strength means walking away when you're wronged, and still leaving the door open for change. No human ship left Sol space. None were needed. The energy lattice around the system remained not as a wall but as a statement, a boundary respected by all. Even Cathari scouts gave it wide berth, not out of fear but respect. Back on Viridia Prime, Joran tended the memorial garden. He often sat on a bench nearby reading old human poems about stars and silence. He liked one line especially. The loudest truths are spoken without sound. One evening, as the station's artificial sun dimmed, he noticed something new at the base of the obsidian stone. A single seedling sprouting from rich soil. It was an earth oak, small, green, and stubbornly alive. No one knew who planted it, but everyone protected it. The concordance never fully returned to what it had been. It could not. Too much had been revealed. Too much had been lost. But in its place grew something quieter, more careful. A union not of power but of humility. And though Earth remained silent, its presence was felt everywhere, in the way decisions were made, in the respect given to small voices, in the pause before a new law was passed. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy. They had changed it by leaving. They had offered the stars. The galaxy had spat on the gift. Now the stars belonged to someone else. And humanity? They were just fine on their own.